Hello, all my happy crumpin' wargamers, you beautiful grots and gits. Today we're going to talk about two amazing things and two terrible things about 10th edition Warhammer 40,000. Before we get into it, this is not an I hate Games Workshop or I love Games Workshop video. This is legit criticisms and legit praises about some amazing things that are coming up and some things that we need to be prepared for because it is going to be radically different in the game of Warhammer 40,000. So let's jump into it. Before we get super started, guys, please, if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, give me that comments. Type it down below. I do respond to every single comment in the comments section. Likes and subscriptions are awesome. I put a lot of work into these videos, and I will keep them coming to you regardless. But if you could just give me that free little like, subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. So, 9th edition has been the best edition of Warhammer 40,000 by far. Not even close. Bar none. Some people like 2nd edition. I was not around for 2nd edition, so I'm not going to make that argument. But 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th beats them all off the pants. So 9th is amazing. And one really cool thing is Games Workshop gets better every single edition. 8th was better than 9th, 8th was better than 7th, and 9th was better than 8th. 10th will be better than 9th. It's just the way it's going to be. Let's look at some of the big problems that were in 9th and how they were fixed. So 9th edition had a couple issues, but the big ones were, oh, that's right, we had Bodyguard also. I forgot to type in Bodyguard. Let me type that down. Bodyguard. Yeah. All right, so these were the issues. We had Flyers. Flyers were a really big problem. Bodyguard was a huge problem. Indirect was a big problem. Spamming lists were problems, and power creep. Now, how did 9th edition handle these? Well, they had the data slate, which was the balanced data slate, which was integrated in or implemented in 9th edition, and it was amazing. It did great work. So spam lists were fixed. So suddenly we have the rule of 3. So now you can no longer take 27 whatevers. You actually have to build a force that's fairly balanced. Aircraft were corrected by being forced to start in reserves. Aircraft were extremely toxic for the game for quite a while. You had Tyranid Harpies, you had the Tal Sunshark bombers, you had a bunch of aircraft that would just start turn 1, fly over you, drop bombs, kill half your army, shoot, destroy everything, and then you couldn't attack them. You couldn't charge them. If you did, they could just fly out of combat, shoot you again, no problem. It was very uninteractive, and it was a huge problem. So I think this was Arcs of Omen, actually, when they did the aircraft nerf. Suddenly they start in strategic reserve. It didn't actually nerf the aircraft, but it did nerf how uninteractive they were and how overpowered they were. So great fix, Games Workshop. Then we had Indirect. This was a big problem, especially back with Orc buggy spam. Maybe that was early Nachmund, or maybe even before Nachmund. I can't quite remember. But this is when you were running all the Rocket Truck Squigglies that had all the indirect fire that were just killing everything. And so Games Workshop came up with a brilliant solution for that. They put a penalty to indirect fire. So what the penalty was is that you're going to be -1 ballistic skill. And this was so much better than just -1 to hit. Because minuses to hit or pluses to hit can't stack. You only get -1 or +1 to hit. So when they gave them a -1 ballistic skill to the firing unit that was using indirect, if you also got them a -1 to hit, suddenly that's an effective -2 to hit. And that was a really good nerf. Plus, you gave your opponent a +1 armor save, so it gave them some chances to survive. It was a great fix. Now, towards the end of Arcs, we've seen that has become a problem again. But that's not because Indirect isn't nerfed correctly. Indirect is nerfed correctly. Games Workshop's just kind of screwed up and is giving core units the indirect keyword. And the problem with giving core words or core units the indirect keyword is that your core units can receive buffs. So essentially what they're doing is they're giving, whether it's Space Wolves who use the stratagem Keen Senses to ignore all ballistic skill and hit modifiers. So suddenly their indirect fires are hitting on 2s from indirect. It doesn't matter. You just have ways to avoid the penalty. What Games Workshop needs to do is stop getting rid of ways to avoid the penalty. But overall, Indirect was fixed pretty well. Bodyguard was a huge issue. They fixed that. They just eliminated their way to use Bodyguard. And that was awesome. Power creep's a problem, but power creep's always going to be a problem. There's just nothing you can really do about it. Just accept the fact that power creep's going to be part of the game because it's part of literally all games, whether it's Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Infinity, literally any game, power creep's a problem. New stuff is always going to be better. All right, now let's get into our 10th edition. We have two super amazing changes. First change I want to talk about is the change to transports. Transports are so much better in 10th edition, and I love it. Transports actually function as transports. Currently, you can't get out of a transport after it moves, which is stupid because the entire purpose of a transport is to transport your models up the field. So in 10th edition, you're going to be able to get out of your dedicated transport after it moves. Now, you can't charge, but you can get out and do your shooting, which is freaking amazing, and it's so good, and it's what needs to happen with transports. Just that by itself is going to change some of the ways that we see the game played, and I love it. I'm all here for it. Then objective control. Objective control is a huge improvement over objective secured, and objective secured was also a rather innovative and cool mechanism. It encouraged you to actually bring troops. Like, why do we not just spam only elite troops and only heavy choice? Well, because you have to hold points to score, and objective control scores points. So it was really it was a good thing. But objective control is much better, because it was always really stupid when you would have Scarbrand and a Bloodthirster on an objective with one Imperial Guardsman, and that one Imperial Guardsman just said, "Hey guys, I control this objective." Very dumb. So now that's no longer going to be a problem, because all units are going to have their assigned objective control value, and it's the person who has the most points on the objective is the one who owns the objective, and that's awesome. I also have a bonus thing here that I love. Battle Shock is a really cool concept. It's going to make our leadership actually matter. It's going to be turning off your objective control. It's going to make it so that you can't use stratagems on your units. It's super powerful, and everything in the game can actually fail it. One thing I'm a little salty about is that my Custodes have the same leadership of Space Marines, which is pretty dumb. But you know what? It's okay. We will move on. But overall, I think the Battle Shock mechanism is much better than the current morale system that we have in 9th edition, and I'm all about it. I'm here for it. Let's talk about two things. And these are actually, I should just say one thing, because it's essentially the same thing. There seem to be a lot of nerfs going on to combat specifically. So engagement range, if you're going to try to fight in 2 ranks, is nerfed. It used to be you had to be within half an inch of a model who is within half an inch of an enemy unit. Currently, now in 10th edition, it's going to be you have to be within base contact of a model who's within base contact. So your 2 ranks fighting is a little bit nerfed. You lose quite a lot of distance on there. And then your charges, pylons, and consolidates must end base to base if possible. This is actually going to get rid of a lot of the combat movement abilities or tricks that we use in the game. This is actually a fairly significant nerf to combat. I'm not a big fan of this. That doesn't mean that it's not made up for in other places. Like, for example, in terrain, I don't think I've seen difficult terrain anywhere. So it looks like there's going to be a lot less movement penalties to our melee armies as well. So one of the things that we really need to talk about is that this is just happening. It's a bit of a problem. Then we go with 2 absolutely terrible things. And these are actual big problems in the game that are going to have to be fixed, because these are things that would make me kind of not want to play the game, actually. Currently, in the movement phase, units may not end movements on an objective. And this actually invalidates a massive proportion of the kits in the game. So the objective marker is actually only 40 millimeters wide. What you guys are thinking of the objectives is like the 3-inch radius off of the 40 millimeter marker. But what this means is that knights, kill rigs, greater demons, a lot of tanks, or dreadnoughts, anything that's like 60 millimeter base or more, it's going to be essentially impossible to charge units that are on objectives depending on terrain layouts. And it's a really big problem. Let me show you what I mean. I'm just going to switch to my TTS view here so I can kind of demonstrate what this is. So let's just kind of zoom in here. I've kind of set it up here. So in the middle of this objective, we've got our objective marker. And this model, while in the movement phase, it could move over it, no problem. It can't actually ever end a movement on it. So if I have a unit of Sagittarium here, and they're standing on the objective just like this, right now it's impossible for the kill rig to charge them. It's a 3-inch charge, and the kill rig cannot charge them. It's really dumb, and I hate this. It's going to lead to a lot of really uninteractive parts of the game where this is just going to get abused. You're going to have people who will stand in these positions to make it impossible to navigate through terrain and through the objective, because he cannot get within charge range without doing something like this and still being on that objective because his base is too big. It's very, very stupid, and it's a big problem for the game. The next thing that I want to talk about, which is a bit of a problem, is going to be the concept of flyers. So flyers are actually having a big problem as well. The rule is now written that when a model that can fly starts or ends a move on a terrain feature, instead of measuring the path it has moved across the battlefield, you instead measure its path through the air or through the air. This is stupid, and it's going to cause a lot of problems. Let me explain why. Let's just head back to the TTS view, and I will show you. All right, so right here, the way it's worded is that my Claytus gravity tank, it has fly, and it moves 14 inches. Typically in 9th edition, if I want to move here, I just fly over it and I move my 14 inches. However, that is no longer possible. You can't do this anymore because the way it's worded, I didn't start or end my movement on a terrain feature. which means that if I wanted to take my Caladius this way, I'm going to have to move 1 inch, fly up 5 inches, and then fly down 5 inches, and then move 3 inches. So he's going to effectively move to be here, which is really stupid. It essentially invalidates all of fly. However, and this will just show you how stupid the rule is, if it starts right here and I wanted to fly 14 inches this way, no problem, because now I'm touching terrain. It's just horribly written. It's a terribly worded rule. I'm not entirely sure what the intent of it was. It's very dumb, and Games Workshop is just going to have to fix it. It's going to make really big problems in the game. So let's just head back to the PowerPoint, and we'll finish up here. So those are the terrible things. And then also, we've got one other thing I want to talk about here. Indirect is likely going to be wildly unbalanced again. Now, the new penalties for indirect in 10th edition is going to be -1 to hit, and you give the opponent cover. However, 3 of the 4 indirect units that we've seen so far revealed ignore cover. And we know that getting +1 to hit, -1 to hit, these types of modifiers they're always very prevalent in the game. Getting them +1 to hit, if they're just a heavy weapon like the Sister's Exorcist, for example, they're already going to be +1 to hit anyway if they just don't move. So it's like, it's really stupid, and it's just going to make all your indirect firing units, they essentially ignore the penalties of firing indirect, which means there's no penalty of firing indirect. So it's going to be a bit of an issue. So that's just a little bonus one I threw in there. So these are the actual bad things that are coming onto the edition, but luckily there's ways to fix them. So let me just talk about a few groundkeeping things, then we'll close off for the day. This game will absolutely not be less lethal. Games Workshop has been promoting 10th edition as a less lethal edition. Wrong. Negative. They're I don't want to say they're lying, but they are completely incorrect about this. So some things that have been implemented in the new edition. There's now a cap of +1 to your armor. You can never receive more than +1 to your armor, whereas previously there was not. Cover can never take you beyond a 3-up armor. Meaning if you're a Space Marine and you're in cover, you're still a 3-up armor. You don't go to a 2-up armor. What it does is it essentially lets you ignore 1 AP. So it's not necessarily useless to put your Space Marines in cover, but you can't get them to a 2-up armor save, which is a bit of a problem. There's almost no -1 to hit in the game. We do have the special rule Stealth, which makes you -1 to hit, but there's no terrain that gives a -1 to hit. Heavy weapons no longer give -1 to hit if you move with them. So the minuses to hit is actually very, very gone. So things will be more accurate. Shooting, it looks actually stronger than it was at Ninth. The strength of all guns are going up. The AP is not really going down that much. We did see like a las cannon went down to AP2, and we saw that some of our previous AP2 weapons went down to AP1, but that's about it. We still have tons of AP4, AP5, the Knight's Harpoon, for example, springs to mind. There's going to be tons of crazy high AP in this game, and it's going to really, really hurt pretty dang hard. This will not be a less lethal game. Not to mention the addition of the Devastating Wounds keyword, which, if you guys have been paying attention to these faction focuses, everything has Devastating Wounds, which means on 6s to wound, you're going to just cause mortal wounds instead of anything else. It's a bit of a freaking issue, especially when they're stacking it with things like Anti-Infantry 4, Anti-Psyker 4, Anti-Vehicle 4. Any roll of a 4 or higher will just cause mortal wounds. You don't even get to make a save. This is not going to be a less lethal edition. I don't necessarily hate that, by the way. I don't think it's bad. I just think everyone needs to understand so that you're not shocked when you realize that this is not a less lethal game. Let's do our wrap-ups here. So 10th edition is actually looking very interesting. Overall, I was very, very excited about 10th edition. I thought everything was perfect until I saw these new rules about the objective control and the fly. These are actually 2 rules that can break the game and can make it honestly just not fun to play. People want to use their knights. They want to use their greater demons, their kill rigs. They want to use these really cool big models. If you make it impossible to use them, it's a big problem. Now, that could be solved by new terrain layouts. The problem with new terrain layouts is that what are you going to do? Just have all the objectives wide out in the open so that combat, which has been nerfed, is effectively defunct. Then it's just a gun range game. It's like, I don't know. I think, honestly, the best way for Games Workshop to solve this is to just strike that from the record. Yes, you may end a movement on an objective marker. I know they want to sell their plastic objective markers, but I don't think it's going to... I think it's terrible for the game, and they did a really bad job writing that rule, even though I also think they did great jobs writing other rules. So that's a problem. Anyway, just like all editions, there's going to be FAQs, and these are very easy things to fix with FAQs. For flyers, for example, they would just put an FAQ out saying, hey, flyers ignore vertical distance for moving. Done. No problem. And then for this objective, just be like, hey, strike this line. You can move across it like you normally would. So overall, I'm actually really excited for 10th. I think it's going to be awesome. I do have some serious concerns, and I really hope they fix those things up because that will make the game kind of fun. But besides that, everything's looking quite cool. Just don't be too disappointed when you see that this game is not less lethal. It's not less lethal, people. It is going to be interesting, innovative, and cool, and I am loving all the faction focuses we have seen. Gene Stealer Cults just dropped. It looked pretty interesting. Maybe I'll go peruse that here in a moment. But anyway, thank you all for your attention. If you would please, give me that like, give me that subscribe, type a comment down in the questions, or give me a question down below, and I will absolutely respond to all comments. I appreciate all of you, and I hope everyone has an amazing day. Stay crumpin', family. All right, bye-bye.